I had finally moved into my dream property, a cabin on a wide wooded lot just outside city limits. The land was free, the air was quiet, and best of all, no HOA for years. I'd lived under strict neighborhood rules where even the color of my front door was policed. Now, for the first time, I was free. At least that's what I thought, till Karen showed up. Karen appeared the very first weekend. She marched up my driveway in her pressed khakis and oversized sunglasses, clutching a clipboard. Without even saying hello, she began listing things that were unacceptable in her neighborhood: my truck, my mailbox, even the color of my siding. I politely told her, "I'm not in your HOA." Her lips pursed. I knew then I'd made an enemy. Over the next few weeks, Karen littered my gate with flyers about mandatory HOA rules. Trash bins out of sight, lawns mowed a certain way, even holiday lights regulated. Each time I threw them in the trash. But Karen escalated. She began photographing my yard, my shed, even my dog, as if she was building a case. Neighbors warned me. She doesn't stop until she wins. One morning, I checked my mailbox and froze. A thick envelope. Inside, court papers. Karen and her HOA board were suing me. They demanded I pay dues, repaint my house, and even dismantle my work shed. My hands shook with rage. How could she possibly think she had control over my land? But instead of lashing out, I decided to fight smarter. I called my old college buddy Jackson, a sharp lawyer who specialized in property law. I showed him the lawsuit. He burst out laughing. "This HOA has no jurisdiction over you. You're not even inside their boundaries." His grin widened. "Actually, this could get interesting. We won't just defend, we'll dismantle them." For weeks, Jackson and I gathered every document, deeds, plat maps, county zoning records. We dug into the HOA's history and operations. That's when Jackson uncovered a bombshell. The HOA hadn't renewed its corporate registration with the state. Technically, it didn't exist anymore. Karen was running a ghost organization, fooling her neighbors into paying dues. The week before trial, Karen cornered me outside my gate. "You'll regret fighting us," she sneered. "Have power, and you're just one man. And by next month, you'll be cutting a check to me." Her smug smile made my blood boil, but I stayed calm. "We'll see, Karen," I replied. Inside, I couldn't wait to watch her downfall. The courthouse buzzed with chatter. Neighbors packed the benches, curious to see Karen's showdown. Karen entered with her board, strutting like royalty. She whispered loudly to her friends, "This will be over quick. He doesn't stand a chance." I sat quietly with Jackson, holding the binder of evidence that would end it all. Karen's lawyer began with a ridiculous argument. Because my home was visible from HOA property, it should fall under their rules. Some people in the courtroom chuckled. The lawyer went on about how my shed destroyed the aesthetic harmony and how my truck was bringing down property values. The judge's eyebrows rose higher with every word. Then Jackson stood, calm, collected, confident. He handed the judge our binder. "Your Honor, here are certified maps showing my client's property is outside the HOA's jurisdiction. They have no authority over him." The judge flipped through the pages, nodding. Slowly. Karen shifted in her chair, her smirk faltering. Jackson wasn't done. "And further, Your Honor, this HOA doesn't legally exist. According to the Secretary of State, their corporate charter dissolved 3 years ago. They've been unlawfully collecting dues and pretending to hold power they do not have." The courtroom gasped. Karen's face drained of color. Karen leapt to her feet. "That's a lie. We've been running this community for years," she shouted. The judge banged his gavel. "Order." But Jackson calmly produced the official government record. The judge read it aloud. Status dissolved. The gallery erupted into whispers. Karen sank back into her seat, trembling. The judge turned sternly to Karen's lawyer. "This case has no standing. Not only does the HOA lack jurisdiction, but it does not legally exist. This lawsuit is dismissed with prejudice." Karen gasped. In less than 3 minutes, everything she'd built her false empire crumbled before her eyes. Word spread instantly. Neighbors who had paid dues for years were furious. They stormed Karen's porch demanding answers. Some even threatened lawsuits of their own for the money she had collected illegally. Karen locked herself inside, blinds drawn, refusing to answer the door. The queen had fallen. Meanwhile, the neighborhood threw an impromptu block party. Free from HOA rules, people blasted music, decorated their homes however they liked, and laughed about the years of petty fines and warnings. I was invited as the guest of honor. One man raised a toast. To the guy who freed us all. Karen's power vanished overnight. Without her HOA, she was just another homeowner. But her reputation was ruined. Neighbors avoided her, businesses refused her service, and whispers followed her everywhere. She went from feared enforcer to lonely outcast. The mighty had fallen, and she had no one to blame but herself. Back at my cabin, peace returned. No more letters, no more photos, no more harassment. I sat on my porch with my dog and a cold beer, watching the sunset. For the first time, I truly felt free. Karen had tried to drag me under her rules, but instead, I'd pulled her mask off for everyone to see. I realized something important. Karen wasn't just about rules. She thrived on control. When she lost that, she lost herself. Maybe one day she'd learn humility, but I doubted it. As for me, I learned the best revenge isn't yelling or fighting, it's exposing the truth in front of everyone. A month later, Karen tried one last desperate move. She attempted to restart the HOA with a petition, but nobody signed. People had tasted freedom, and they weren't about to give it back. Her flyers ended up in the trash, just like the ones she used to leave on my gate. Her voice no longer carried weight. And the end. Karen sued me to control me. Instead, I legally shut her down in 3 minutes flat. Her HOA was gone, her power dissolved, and her reputation shattered. I didn't just win a case, I freed an entire neighborhood from years of tyranny. And every time I drive past her house, I remember sometimes the best revenge is letting someone choke on their own arrogance. I stood in the middle of my new property, breathing in the crisp air. My cabin was small, but it was mine. No HOA, no. Board meetings, no ridiculous letters about grass height. It's just peace. My dog barked happily, chasing squirrels. I grinned, finally free. But little did I know, freedom was about to be challenged. As I unloaded boxes, a neighbor named Mark strolled over. "You must be the new guy," he said, extending a hand. We chatted briefly before his tone grew serious. "Listen, watch out. For Karen, she runs the HOA next door like a dictator. If she notices you, she'll try to rope you in, even though your land isn't part of her neighborhood." I laughed. "She can't do that." Mark just shook his head. "You'll see." That Saturday, Karen arrived. Sunglasses, clipboard, lips pressed tight. She didn't say hello. "Your truck is an eyesore. It lowers property values," she declared. I frowned. "I don't live in your HOA. It doesn't matter," she snapped. "We have standards here." I kept calm. "But your standards stop at my fence line." Her glare promised one thing: this wasn't over. Within days, flyers piled up at my gate. Mandatory dues, community regulations, approved paint colors. Every morning, I tossed them into the trash. Then the notes began scribbled threats about penalties if I didn't comply. I chuckled at first, but irritation grew. This woman didn't know how to quit. At the local diner, I overheard whispers, Karen's targeting the new guy. She fined me once for planting the wrong flowers. She thinks she owns this place. It became clear Karen wasn't just bossy. She ruled her HOA with fear. And now, I was her next conquest. One evening, I found Karen photographing my shed. "What are you doing on my property?" I demanded. "This shed is illegal under HOA code," she snapped. I laughed bitterly. "I'm not under your code," she smirked. "We'll see about that." That smirk haunted me. I knew she was planning something bigger. The envelope arrived. In my mailbox, my stomach dropped. Karen and her HOA were suing me. They wanted money, changes to my home, and removal of my shed. I clenched my fists. This wasn't a joke anymore. This was war. I dialed Jackson, my old college buddy turned property lawyer. "She's suing you?" He laughed. "Not funny," I muttered. "Can she even do this?" "No," Jackson said confidently. "She has zero jurisdiction. But if you want, we can not only win, we can end her HOA reign permanently." A spark of hope lit inside me. Let's do it. For weeks, Jackson dug through county records. He uncovered deeds, maps, zoning ordinances, all proving my land wasn't under HOA control. Then came the jackpot. The HOA hadn't renewed its corporate paperwork. Legally, it didn't exist anymore. Karen was running a dead organization, and she didn't even know it. Before trial, Karen stopped by my driveway. "You really think you can beat me?" She sneered. I stayed calm. "I don't think—" "I know," she scoffed. "People like you don't win. I am the HOA. Everyone bows to me." I smiled. "Then let's see if the judge does." The courthouse buzzed with chatter. Neighbors filled the benches, some rooting for me, many curious, and a few loyal to Karen. She walked in, flanked by her board, chin high, like she was royalty. I sat quietly with Jackson, clutching the binder of evidence that would destroy her case. Karen's lawyer stood. "Your Honor, the defendant's property is visible from our neighborhood. Therefore, it directly impacts our community values. He must see." Karen smirked, whispering to her board. The lawyer went on about unsightly vehicles and improper structures. The judge leaned back, skeptical but listening. Karen paraded a few neighbors as witnesses. One complained my shed ruined the view. Another said my dog barked too much. A third insisted my truck looked like a junkyard vehicle. Each comment dripped with exaggeration. I noticed, though, the courtroom wasn't buying it. Some people even chuckled. Jackson rose. "Calm as ever, Your Honor. The HOA claims authority where it has none. Here's the certified plat map and zoning document showing my client's property lies completely outside their jurisdiction." He handed the binder to the judge. The room grew still. Karen shifted in her seat, her confidence cracking. The judge flipped through the maps. "Interesting," he muttered. Then he looked at Karen. "Why is your HOA pursuing enforcement outside its boundaries?" Karen jumped in. "Because it affects us. Division." "That's enough." The judge raised an eyebrow. "That is not how the law works." Jackson cleared his throat. "And there's more. According to the Secretary of State, this HOA's corporate charter was dissolved 3 years ago. They have no legal standing." He handed the document over. The courtroom gasped. Karen's eyes widened in horror. Karen shot up. "That's impossible. We've been running the HOA for years, collecting dues, enforcing rules." The judge cut her off. "Illegally, it seems." Karen's voice shook. "No, they're lying." Jackson remained cool. "We pulled these directly from the state records." The judge nodded gravely. The judge's voice rang clear. "This case is dismissed with prejudice. The HOA has no jurisdiction, and furthermore, it does not exist as a legal entity. This court cannot entertain frivolous claims." Karen collapsed into her chair, pale as paper. Her empire was gone in less than 3 minutes. The gallery erupted. Some neighbors whispered angrily, "Wait, we've been paying dues all this time to nothing?" Others looked relieved, even excited. Karen's board members avoided her gaze, embarrassed. Justice had been swift. As I left the courthouse, Karen rushed after me. Her sunglasses couldn't hide the tears brimming in her eyes. "You ruined everything," she hissed. "No, Karen," I said evenly. "You ruined yourself." She clenched her fists. "This isn't over," I smiled. "For you it is." Then I walked away free. The very next morning, my phone buzzed. Mark, my neighbor, called. "You won't believe this," he said. "Half the neighborhood is outside Karen's house demanding refunds. They just found out she's been running a dead HOA for years." I chuckled. "Looks like her empire's turning against her." Dozens of neighbors crowded Karen's lawn, waving canceled checks and HOA fine notices. "You've scammed us," one man shouted. Another yelled, "You owe me 3 years of dues." Karen stood at the window, blinds half closed, refusing to come outside. The once feared queen was now trapped in her castle. Later, she finally emerged. Her voice shook. "This is all a misunderstanding. We'll fix the paperwork, and everything will go back to normal." But her neighbors laughed bitterly. "Normal? You fined me for painting my shutters blue? You threatened to tow my car?" One woman sneered, "You're finished, Karen." That night, Karen called an emergency meeting with her HOA board, but instead of support, they turned on her. "You told us the HOA was official," one member spat. Another sighed, "We followed you blindly, and now we're all exposed." One by one, they resigned. Karen sat alone at the head of the table, powerless. Meanwhile, the neighborhood threw a massive block party. Lawns decorated wildly, kids rode bikes without helmets, and one guy even set up a backyard pig roast, something Karen had banned. Laughter filled the air. People felt free for the first time in years. Mark raised a glass in my direction. "The man who ended the tyranny." Meanwhile, the neighborhood threw a massive block party. Lawns decorated wildly, kids rode bikes without helmets, and one guy even set up a backyard pig roast, something Karen had banned. Laughter filled the air. People felt free for the first time in years. Mark raised a glass in my direction. "To the man who ended the tyranny." While others celebrated, Karen stayed indoors. She peered out through her blinds, watching the joy she could no longer control. Her phone buzzed non-stop with angry messages demanding refunds. Once admired or feared, she was now avoided like a disease. The silence inside her home was crushing. I sat on my porch, sipping a beer, my dog curled at my feet. For the first time since moving in, I felt complete peace. The sunset painted the sky orange, and the distant sound of the block party made me smile. I hadn't just won a lawsuit, I had freed a community. But Karen wasn't done. The following week, flyers appeared again, this time begging for signatures to re-establish the HOA legally. She went door to door, pleading. "Without rules, property values will plummet," she insisted. But every door slammed in her face. Nobody signed. Neighbors took to social media, exposing Karen's antics. Screenshots of her threatening texts, fines, and ridiculous rules went viral. Comments poured in. "Who bans kids from chalking sidewalks? She'll find someone for a garden gnome." Karen became a laughingstock not just in the neighborhood but online. One evening, Karen cornered me near my driveway again. Her eyes were wild, her voice trembling. "You don't understand. I need control. Without it, I'm nothing." I stared at her calmly. "That's your problem, not mine." She took a step closer. "I'll find another way." I shook my head. "Karen, it's over. The neighborhood's free, and so am I." Karen reserved the community clubhouse for a mandatory HOA meeting. She decorated with banners reading "Restore Order." But when the night came, only 3 people showed up. 2 curious teens and a man who thought it was a bingo night. Karen stood at the podium, face flushed with humiliation. Days later, many neighbors received letters. This time, not from Karen but from lawyers representing homeowners. They demanded refunds for illegally collected dues. Some even threatened class action lawsuits. Word spread quickly. Karen wasn't just disliked. No, she was in legal jeopardy. Days later, many neighbors received letters, this time not from Karen, but from lawyers representing homeowners. They demanded refunds for illegally collected dues. Some even threatened class action lawsuits. Word spread quickly. Karen wasn't just disliked. Now she was in legal jeopardy. I saw her pacing on her porch, phone pressed to her ear. It wasn't fraud. It was just a clerical mistake. She shouted to someone, her voice cracked. I was the HOA. They needed me. But the truth was clear. Nobody needed her anymore. I saw her pacing on her porch, phone pressed to her ear. It wasn't fraud. It was just a clerical mistake, she shouted to someone, her voice cracked. I was the HOA. They needed me. But the truth was clear. Nobody needed her anymore. Without HOA restrictions, the community bloomed. One man built a treehouse for his kids. Another painted his house bright yellow. Families planted gardens, strung up lights, and hosted BBQs. For the first time in years, the neighborhood felt alive. Karen, watching from her window, felt more irrelevant by the day at my cabin. I expanded my shed and parked my truck proudly in view. I no longer feared surprise notes or photos. Mark stopped by, grinning. "Feels good, doesn't it? You didn't just win for yourself, you freed us all." I realized he was right. Sometimes one fight changes everything. Late one night, Karen posted a long rant online. She begged strangers for sympathy, claiming she was persecuted for trolling. To protect her community? But the internet wasn't kind. Replies mocked her. "Lady, you banned lawn chairs." Control freak much? Her reputation sank even lower. Worldwide this time. County officials officially removed Karen's HOA from all public listings. It no longer existed even on paper. The website she ran was shut down, the email addresses bounced back. Her empire wasn't just collapsed, was erased. She had nothing left to cling to. One evening, I saw her wandering the street, muttering to herself. Rules, structure, order. Her hair was disheveled, clipboard gone. Former neighbor whispered to me, "She doesn't know who she is without control." Watching her unravel, I almost felt sorry, almost. In Karen's absence, neighbors grew closer. They helped each other repair fences, shared tools, and swapped garden produce. Kids played freely, no longer scolded for sidewalk chalk violations. The neighborhood wasn't perfect, but it was happier. Freedom had built more unity than rules ever did. Karen tried one final desperate act. She mailed HOA fine notices to a few households, demanding payment. This time nobody ignored it. They marched straight to the county sheriff with her letters. Karen was warned, one more fraudulent attempt, and she'd face criminal charges. The queen was officially dethroned. The county sheriff finally came knocking at Karen's door. She stood there in her robe, stunned. As the officer explained, "Any more false fines or illegal collections and you'll be facing charges." For the first time, Karen didn't argue. She just nodded, pale and trembling. Local news picked up the story. HOA dissolved. Residents freed from fake rules. Cameras rolled outside Karen's house, neighbors telling their horror stories. Karen peeked out the blinds, humiliated. Once she craved attention, now she hid from it. Several homeowners filed lawsuits against Karen for the money she had taken over the years. She tried to claim ignorance, but the evidence was stacked against her bank deposits, written fines, and fake notices. Karen was cornered on all sides. The few allies she once had vanished. Her board members stopped returning calls. Her closest neighbor, once loyal, avoided her entirely. Even the mailman joked, "Nobody wants her letters anymore." Karen had built her life on control, and now she was left with nothing. One morning, neighbors awoke to find a giant handmade sign on her lawn, "No more HOA. We are free." Nobody admitted to putting it there, but everyone secretly smiled. Karen tore it down furiously, but by noon, another appeared. This time she left it with no HOA to enforce her own rules. Karen's house ironically fell into disrepair. Her yard grew patchy, her paint peeled, and weeds crept up the sidewalk. The woman who once fined others for aesthetic violations now lived in the shabbiest house on the block. Meanwhile, I broke ground on a new garage for my truck. Karen watched from her window, powerless. Mark came over, laughing. "I bet she's choking on this." I smiled. "This garage is more than a building, it's proof she can't touch me." Karen mailed one last desperate letter to everyone. "Without me, this community will collapse." But instead of fear, people laughed. Kids drew cartoons, mocking. Her neighbors framed the letter as a joke. Her words, once dreaded, had become comedy. Rumors spread that Karen might lose her house. With legal fees piling up and refunds demanded, she struggled financially. She might put it up for auction, Mark whispered. The thought stunned the community. Karen was forced out of the very neighborhood she once ruled. Weeks later, Karen vanished. Her blinds stayed shut, mailbox overflowing. One morning, a moving truck arrived. Quietly, without farewell, Karen left. No goodbyes, no explanations, just silence. The queen had abandoned her throne. The neighborhood threw a massive celebration. Freedom Day. Music blasted, grills smoked, kids ran with sparklers. People cheered, "No more HOA." I stood in the center, overwhelmed. I hadn't meant to lead a revolution, but somehow I had. Later that night, Mark and I sat on my porch. "Funny," he said. "You just wanted peace, but you gave us all freedom." I nodded. Karen taught us something. Control isn't community. Respect is. The stars glittered above, and for the first time, the neighborhood truly felt united. Karen's old house sat empty, for sale but ignored. Buyers backed out once they heard the story. Some joked it was cursed. Kids whispered about the ghost of Karen haunting it. Her legacy had become nothing but a cautionary tale. One day, I received a card in my mailbox. It was unsigned, but inside it read, "Thank you for standing up to her. You didn't just fight for yourself, saved us all." I smiled, tucking it away. Sometimes the quiet victories meant the most. In the end, Karen sued me to control me. But in 3 minutes, I shut her down legally and with it. Her entire false empire. She left in disgrace while the neighborhood thrived. Every time I pass her old house, I remember tyrants only rule if people let them. And sometimes, all it takes is one person standing up to end the reign of a bully.